but really, I present to you the Umbrella Academy.
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's superhero Slate, oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And this week, this is a Superhero Slate review for Netflix's Umbrella Academy.
That's what the intro sounds like when Chris slightly misses the time code.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like you thought if you spoke fast enough, you'd catch up. You'd travel back in time, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so my problem was I must have time traveled because I looked up and I'm like, oh, I've got like 10 seconds to say something. No, I don't. Here we go. We're doing the Umbrella Academy.
It's the time code that wasn't.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
before we start to make too many inside references, this is the spoiler cast for Netflix's season 1 of the Umbrella Academy. So we're going to start the show off with spoiler-free reviews, which if you listen to our normal weekly news segments, you may have already heard our review, but hey, maybe not, so we'll lay it on you spoiler-free just for the first couple minutes, and then we're going to dive into this 10-episode first season. We're going to talk about all the characters, all the ins and outs, the spoilers, Easter eggs, if there's any to talk about that we might be familiar with. I don't know. We'll find out. So I think that's what's on the agenda right now, Chris.
That sounds great. So without further ado, Mike, what did you think of the Umbrella Academy?
So this will be an interesting review just because we both finished this show at different times. I was able to binge it in the very first weekend that it came out, which should pretty much show you right there how much I like the show. And then you got it the second weekend because you obviously had things going on in your life. You couldn't binge things right away.
You had a great 3-day weekend, and I didn't get that 3-day weekend. But yeah, I mean, still, yeah. I mean, we got there as quick as we could.
Yeah, but unfortunately what happens when you binge things, like, you have to start to recall things that you watched like 2 weeks ago. We were trying to think if the show had any sort of interesting quotes off the top of our head to ring in the beginning of the show. We're like, I can't remember any specifics. So this will be a fun kind of memory lane, a very recent memory lane as we stroll through the show. But spoiler free, I really dug this show. It's stuck with me quite a bit. I still think about it every now and then. I think the characters are so engaging, they're so fun, they're so unique. They all have just different perspectives. They have different powers, so they have different ways that they kind of grew up. There's so much lore in this show that we don't even know about yet, which really makes me hopeful for the future of this series. And I wasn't even really sure if a lot of people were talking about this show. You know, once you kind of post some fan art on Instagram like I did the other week with the hashtag Umbrella Academy, I start to see a lot of Umbrella Academy stuff in my feed, so I wasn't sure if I was just in my own little bubble of like, oh, people are digging the show. But I did send you an article just before we hopped on the mics that said Umbrella Academy, according to some insider data tracking that Screen Rant got a hold of, that show is more popular right now than The Flash, which is the number one superhero TV show right now on air. So this is a big deal that Netflix could pull this off, and I think it's all really well deserved. I can't wait to see where it goes. Yeah, I really dig it. They find a way to make the special effects and the superpowers work. Nothing ever really gets too cringy, which is sometimes happening on a TV superhero budget. But, you know, this is Netflix, so it's plussed up a little bit more. You can just really tell that they're going all out because they're about to lose all of these, you know, Marvel properties and Disney movies. So I'm glad that they really stuck a claim to this. Would you call this an independent comic book?
I honestly don't remember who publishes it, but I mean, it's not your standard superhero comic book series or long term one. So. Maybe
not by definition independent, but I would say it's kind of like an indie comic, you know. So I'm just cool that they were able to bring this kind of niche world to the mainstream. So yeah, I really dug this. We've been recommending it for like the last 2 weeks. Some people have reached out on Twitter saying that they're giving it a shot now. So I'm really glad that that's happening. So yeah, man, Chris, what did you think about the Umbrella Academy?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. I think watching the show, the first episode, you know, that's usually where you're going to tell how the rest of the show is going to go. Mm-hmm. And this show really nailed it on the head for being an hour long, you know, 55 minute episodes. You really got to feel for all these characters because there are, 7 characters, 7 siblings that you're learning about over this, and then like their family dynamic and what worked and what didn't work. And this is really, really good. And then over the course of that, you're introduced to more characters that you tend to, you don't have to like what they're doing, but you want to see more of them. So I got to tell you, the characters are really, really fleshed out in this, and it only gets better as the series goes on. I think the quality of the show and how it looks and how it's presented is above anything else. I mean, I know Netflix does put out, quality stuff on their things, but like, we're in a world where we have the DC universe releasing shows at the same time. Doom Patrol, which has like a very similar vibe to it, doesn't have that quite polished. This one does for the same kind of show, and I don't even know, maybe the same number of episodes, but I really like the look of it. There are some parts we'll talk about later that I'm like, this could have been stronger, but when I've read the comic books this is based on, and this deviates probably more than 50% of the material, but it's the end of it's still there, which is really like the core of the material still there. So that doesn't bother me a whole lot.
Yeah, speaking of the comic, while you're talking, I just looked this up, and I was surprised to find out that there's only 15 issues of this comic book. It looks like it went from 2007 to 2013, so it's not like a super long run, and it's Dark Horse, so not necessarily independent, but a small publisher. Just
to make sure, so this is based on the 2007 and 2008 series. One's called the Apocalypse Suite, and one's called Dallas, which were released like a year back to back. Volume 3 just started coming out this year, and there's I think going to be 8 total volumes when it's all said and done.
Okay.
So like Gerard Way, the lead singer of My Chemical Romance, wrote this back in the early 2000s, and this has picked up the past couple years again, and he's going to continue with these. So if there is talks of a sequel or something going forward, he's going to be feeding those informations to them, kind of like how Game of Thrones isn't done yet, but they're still doing the show and it deviates a little bit. So I've got to also give this show props, because you have the stats about the viewership, I have stats about music. The music in the show is fantastic. Because of that, the artists and the songs in this from Umbrella are up 50% in sales and streams following the premiere of the show.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't even think about, probably you can go on Spotify, I would assume, and just find like an Umbrella Academy, like either official playlist or unofficial kind of soundtrack. I should check that out.
Yeah, the first episode, which I feel is not too spoilery all around, because the trailer, but like there's a scene in the trailer where they play Tiffany's song "I Think We're Alone Now," and that's a great song. Like the music lines up with the show so well, and they continue it throughout the whole series, and I've just got to give it mad props for that, because I'm just very impressed with it.
So. That's right, from Chris Dillard himself. Mad props. Put that on your Blu-ray release that may or may not come, since it's a streaming show.
Exactly. If it does come out on Blu-ray, I might add this to my collection. But I want more, and I'm very excited for this. Kind of going forward. So I would recommend it. Like I said, I would recommend this to everyone who gets a chance to sit down and watch it.
Chris, I would actually say you might be legally obligated to buy the Blu-ray, because if you listen to our normal episodes, you should know that Chris does not have Netflix, so you might be wondering how he watched this. So
I found out recently we have my sister-in-law's Netflix login as well. So if we wanted to... If we need to watch more Netflix, we can always pop that in. But we're not. There
you go. You're technically technically not liable anymore.
Exactly. So I'm not out. We're not current Netflix subscribers, but that doesn't matter. I think this is a great show for Netflix, and I hope more people do get a chance to watch it though. So, that's my kind of spoiler-free take on it. Mike, anything else you want to add other than the fact we recommend it before we jump into these details? We've been chomping at the bit to get out for.
I want to jump into these details, Chris. Let's do it.
All right. So spoilers starting right now. One of my favorite characters is number 5 in this, Mike, and he doesn't give it a name throughout the whole thing, but you find at the first episode he went forward in time, saw the end of the world, and then came back, which sends this company called, was it the Agency or not the Collective, but the time traveling like police are now after him throughout the whole show. and I just think that the kid who played him nailed this role throughout the whole thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're just like, okay, you need to play a kid that used to be a kid, but grew up and then now is back in his body. But don't dwell on being in the body too much. You just need the old man personality, and you're basically just in a vessel trying to get a job done. And I thought his performance was great, and just the time travel in general. I've been going through this in my head for a long time. So you got a brand new superhero show, all brand new characters with a somewhat creative backstory, something we haven't seen before. Of all what was it, 40 people were basically instantly gave birth.
42. So in the comic
42.
book, just to throw this in there, they are born because there's this cosmic space wrestling match, and whoever is wrestling in this, one of them delivered the winning elbow drop, and that was the exact moment all these women became pregnant and had birth that same day. It's a whole different thing in the comic book, but there are 42 kids out there with these powers, and then we get to follow these.
Wow,
7.
okay, I was not expecting that at all. But very kind of a unique way to kind of bring superpowered people into the world, and knowing that there's still people out there looming, I thought was really cool. So you kind of have this interesting way to bring heroes into it, and then you think the kind of unique take they're going to go through this series of just, how do these people deal when they're kind of their father dies, and then they're just all kind of broken people. Some of them don't have really practical power, some of them do, some of them are all hung up on it. They're all basically adopted, so they all have that with them anyway, even if they didn't have superpowers. And then you think that's going to be the show, and then all of a sudden they're just like, no, guess what? Time travel. It's like it's like folding in two different shows on top of each other, and you think there's no way it could work, and it does. And the thing is, with like time travel shows and fiction in general, you have to focus so much on the rules. You either have to find a way to get around the rules, or explain the rules, or explain that the rules are not important, and they just find a way to weave this in so well. And it's like you're dealing with superpowers, you're dealing with time travel, and the funny thing is, the time travel isn't even necessarily the superpower. Yes, number 5 can time travel and jump through space, but also there's just tangentially some technology that maybe it's related to superpowers, maybe not, but they just can make these briefcases where you can travel back in time, and it's just like there's like no tie to it being a superhero. It's just so weird and bizarre, and I just love that it works. Like, they have a character for no reason on the moon at the beginning of the show, and like I was expecting that to come up with some sort of practical purpose. Maybe he really did put that guy on the moon because maybe like a meteor was coming, because there's this whole looming question of what destroys the Earth. And I was like, maybe it's an asteroid, and like the father knew it, so he put his son on the moon. Like, no, they just put the character on a moon in this really quirky like RV, like moon RV with like a moon dumpster, and it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, we don't know how he got up there, we don't know how he came back, but it doesn't matter because it's just weird vibe, which now kind of makes sense when you say someone's wrestling and the final wrestling move makes it's weird, man.
Well, but it's also like that same character on the moon, you come to find out has the body of a gorilla as well.
That
you think
fun.
Is his superpower like he's big, beefy, strong dude? Well, kinda, but that wasn't really his superpower either. It was a serum he was given that turned him into that.
So what was his superpower? Did he just have like enhanced strength, and then they put monkey juice in him, and then he just got enhanced strength on top of monkey strength?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's kind of like a Captain America style, like a strategist, and like they don't really tell you what his power really was beforehand. Like, but I think that's what it was. Like, he's like a very athletic character who was like very strong and could handle all this stuff, and that's like kind of like what he was. Maybe the natural born leader, but like nothing physically like a real power like the rumor or like the seance, or even Ben, who had the eldritch monsters who comes out of his body. So it's definitely interesting. I love all the characters. I think the seance, or I guess Klaus as we in this one, I really like Klaus as well.
Trey Magnifique, my favorite character in the whole show. Robert Sheehan, who also played Nathan in The Misfits back in the day, which I think you can watch The Misfits on Hulu, possibly. I think that was the last place I saw it. But yeah, I love this guy. He is so good at just playing these wacky, goofy, just out there roles. And, like, there are some very serious parts in this series that he has to play. Like, when he goes back to Vietnam, I wasn't expecting that to just kind of, like, They're like, we have this really goofy character. He needs to have a character arc. Oh, instead of just like showing him arcing through the whole season, let's just send him back in time, but then relative to everybody else in the show. You're not going to see his entire year in Vietnam. He's just going to come back just a damaged, broken, PTSD man, and then that'll be his arc. I just thought that was so clever, so hilarious, and like he just comes back and he just destroys the briefcase like right in front of him because everything that he went through. Like the decisions, they're like throwing these Hail Marys. They're just going for it in this show, which I think was amazing.
They really, I mean, every character has a really, really good arc throughout this whole thing. I think the only one I don't like the most, I'm going to be honest, is Ellen Page's Vanya character.
You know, I'm glad that we agree because I was going to bring that up too.
Because she is the weakest one, and the whole point of her purpose is like she's told she doesn't have. Is she the Dark Phoenix of this series? Is this what this is?
That is kind of what it feels like, right?
Because like, oh, you're too powerful. You know, your emotions let you amplify sounds, and then that's where your power comes from. So we're gonna take away all your powers and give you pills. That's not how it went down in the comic book, by the way. Just to give you a heads up, like that's because like I was trying to figure out like. So he knows he has powers, but like the way to bring him out, like this conductor of this orchestra, like I don't know if like submits her like experiments and all this other stuff to bring out this white violinist persona in her, and anything she does with the violin like sends out in waves, like kind of thing. So it was way different in there, but because that creepy boyfriend revenge dude wasn't.
Let me talk about this creepy boyfriend guy because we're just riffing. We're not keeping to any structure here. So I just want to say
there's time travel. We don't know what's going on.
I never once thought that boyfriend was not creepy. So I don't know if that was intentional, but if they were trying to like keep it a secret, it didn't work. The second he was on the screen, this like weird dude just shows up. There's this just bizarre tension in the very first scene that he's in. A grown man just trying to learn violin. He's just overly sweet. He knows all the right things to say. He's not being too pushy. It's just really weird. Like it kind of made me think what they were trying to do was, remember in the second season of Stranger Things, they bring in that second father figure. I don't even remember the character's name, but he was kind of like the doofy guy he was also in AV Club. Who was he? Wasn't he played by the guy who played Samwise in Lord of the Rings? It's been a while since I've seen.
Like,
it's been.
Bob, was it Bob the boyfriend?
Yeah, maybe it was Bob. So I was thinking they were trying to go for like a Bob type of character. Like, you know, he's just really nice, really sweet, but then, you know, he gets in a little too far, doesn't know that he's dating like a superhero or something like that. But I just knew from the very beginning that this guy wasn't what he was. So like there was no sort of like reveal when it came out that he was a bad guy. Like I saw that coming from a mile away. Yeah. And then I can't give myself credit to this, but my wife was like, oh, Ellen Page has powers and she's the one that destroys the Earth, like on maybe episode 2 or 3. So she saw that also coming, and I don't know how soon I would have got it if she didn't tell me, but it didn't feel like they were really being too like sneaky with that. So I think that could have been dealt with a little bit better.
I agree. Well, everything she did was stupid. Like if she just stopped and listened, like it's one of those things like you sit down and have a conversation for a minute, actually everything would be fine. Like none of this would have happened at the end of the day. Had her sister showed up with the paperwork in the house, she might not have got her throat slit by the violin strings. Which that happened in the comic book, and then in the end, she actually shoots Vanya in the head rather than blows her eardrums out and makes her deaf. Which was what I was waiting for that the whole time. I'm like, oh, she's gonna shoot her, but she didn't. But that's fine. Ellen Page and then creepy dude. Like, why was he just there at all the right times? I guess I was hoping to find out maybe he had a power as well. Like maybe he was one of the other 42 that were left, because he's just like, oh, I happened to get into your house or like, you know, find your family, and then happen to find you violin lessons and find that book. Like he found that book like the day of the violin lessons. Like how did he?
Yeah, he just happened, and a lot of it really hinged on that book. He just happened to kind of find the dumpster. He was kind of this weird amalgamation of like Syndrome from The Incredibles mixed with the character from Civil War. What was the bad guy's name? He was he a Baron Zola. Zola? That's right.
Yeah, was it Zola? No, it's not Zola. I get what you're saying. No,
yeah,
I
but kind of like if you put those two together, that's kind of the character that you get. He's got a grudge because he wasn't able to join the academy, but also he has this master plan to get back at him. But yeah, I don't know. When you say Ellen Page, you know, she was just being stupid, like, I agree with that. Like, just because somebody's, like, depressed and dejected and they're on, like, kind of these mind-numbing pills doesn't mean that they're just going to fall for, like, anybody or fall for anything. There were so many times when I'm just like Vanya, can't you tell that this dude is just creepy as hell and he's being really weird and really pushy trying to develop your powers, you know? Yeah. Maybe maybe if he would have revealed much earlier on that he was like abused as a kid, maybe he could have kind of used that as a way to, like, you know, manipulate her a little bit more, but he never really seemed like a master manipulator. He just seemed to be getting very, very lucky many times.
Or like he was able to sneak into places and kill people. Like, didn't he just get out of prison? Like, he's not. How did he know how to do all this? He's been in prison for however many years. But
he just killed that poor first chair violinist. She dead somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like, he didn't sell me on his character, and Ellen Page didn't sell me on her character the whole time either.
Which is strange because I know Ellen Page is a great actress, you know, so I don't really know if it was just the direction of her character. I was kind of hoping the reveal of her powers would be more exciting because I was kind of down for, you know, having one, like, kind of character without powers. Like, oh, this is cool. Number 7 doesn't have any powers. This is how she deals in life, being surrounded by siblings that are all extraordinary. You know, maybe she'll come into some sort of, like, team leader role where she doesn't have any powers. But then, like, you start to figure out, oh, you know, maybe there's a chance that she does. I was hoping there'd be some sort of reveal, but it was a very slow reveal. Like, she starts affecting things, and you're like, okay, she does have a power, but we don't know what it is. I thought it might be something, like, cool, like, I don't know, maybe like a car is about to crush somebody, and she reacts and, you know, saves somebody at the last second.
Well, I thought her power would come directly from the violin and not just sounds in general, which would have been way more like, everyone has a very specific ability. Mm-hmm. How did they find out the rumor was just like she has to say I heard a rumor was her power? Like, I don't need to know that, but like that's a very specific skill set for her abilities. And Ellen Page's was just like your anger and sound. Like that's what you do.
Yeah, and one thing they didn't quite describe to us, I could totally see their dad coming to the conclusion that her powers are too powerful and could destroy things. But in the flashbacks, we never really see her destroy anything of significance. Like, what, she destroys like a couple like wine glasses, like in a row, and then all of a sudden he extrapolates that into like destroying the planet. I would think a man that's so obsessed would do everything that he could to try to develop these powers. I mean, you got somebody that can talk to the dead, a girl who can say a rumor that could totally change the fate of the whole planet, but she's not the one that's also like inoculated. So yeah, I don't know, maybe a little bit more work there, but yeah, I agree. The whole Vanya storyline in general is weak, but the thing is we have like 7+ other storylines that I think are really, really great. And I think we should just for a minute talk about Cha-Cha and Hazel, which is this villain duo, which I did not expect to get this much character development. And you really start to fall in love with Hazel and just him just getting tired of the job. Like he falls in love with that donut shop owner, which is kind of bizarre because they're very different in age. But, you know, if it was kind of the age difference was shifted down in any given way, if it was maybe like a 20-year-old maybe fall in love with an older like 30+-year-old or something like that. But yeah, it's just so weird. But like they just seem to really love each other.
Well, it wasn't a perfect relationship. I mean, he's a murderer who travels through time, and she runs a donut shop, and they just wanted the simple things in life. And I think that lack of like, they're not beautiful people, they're not like, you know, rich successful people falling in love, like that made it feel more real. And maybe that's why we like the characters so much, because they weren't trying to take over the world or anything. They just wanted to go watch birds upstate for life. I really like Hazel, and I really especially enjoyed the episodes what we had, the day that was and the day that wasn't.
Oh yeah, we should talk about those.
Where Five sends them the orders to kill each other. And then, like, the next 3 episodes is a cat and mouse game between Hazel and Cha-Cha trying to off each other so they could complete their mission, so to speak.
Yeah. I love seeing the mechanics of that time travel office. Like I love that this time travel organization decided that the 1950s was just the right decade, to operate out of. So like, oh, that's cool. I like that they're doing that. It's a cool aesthetic. Everything's dealt with in tubes. Like, it's not a perfect system. They're like, oh, we can't get rid of that secretary that runs the tube. She's just been here forever. She's really nice. We can't just get rid of her. So yeah, just all that attention to detail is great. But yeah, I love that halfway through this season, we have all of these secrets and all of these reveals that everybody's starting to figure out. We have characters falling in love with each other finally, which they're not genetically siblings, so it's not as creepy as you think it might be.
It's like a Brady Bunch scenario.
Yeah, they just grew up next to each other. And we're getting this reveal of like, oh, I need to tell you the secret and everything. Stuff's starting to come out, and then all of a sudden, like, Vanya's like, she finds the journal under the bed. Everything's about to be revealed, and then bam, time travel undoes it all. I thought that was so cool that, somebody could have pitched the idea of, let's have a whole episode that ends up being inconsequential and we just rewrite it. We just have to undo it all. And like, someone's probably thinking, oh, that's a horrible idea. You're going to get the audience invested in it and then rip it all away from them. But it was great because I think if it was a normal week by week show and you had to wait a whole nother week, I would have been pissed. But the fact that I could just jump right into the next episode, I thought that was so cool. What a great way to take advantage of like the streaming release, And
it had that parallel, like, the next day happened, but it happened like similarly, but not close enough at the end of the day. And I'm pretty sure that's at the end of that day is where I think Klaus ends up with a briefcase and goes to Vietnam. I think was the end of that second one. But like, you got, I mean, you got everyone, like, all the characters coming together, all like, oh, this is almost like everything's happening perfectly for everything to be great, and then it's like reset. Nope, everything just messed itself right up again. Which I have to say, there is one character in the house I love seeing, but I hated the whole time he was there. Was actually Pogo.
Oh, really?
Because he was always like, "I'm sorry, but yes, that is true." Like, he was always like, "I'm sorry, but yeah, your dad lied to you. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry." Like, every time he showed up, he was just like an exposition kind of monkey, like trying to tell us what was actually happening in the dad's head. But, and it's like, it's not his fault. Like, the dad was a scumlord, running this family or whatever. But like, like, he was just there to be the apology for that, like, to unveil all this stuff.
Yeah. So, do you believe that he actually committed suicide to bring his kids together? Like, I feel like there's got to be something else going on there, just because we see this kind of weird, like, it's not like really post credits, but I think at the beginning of either episode 9 or 10, like the cold open, we see him back in time, like coming to America, like, stating his name at like the Statue of Liberty, and like, well, that doesn't line up time wise. Like, is he like just incredibly old? Does he age very well? Is he a time traveler?
Can I lay something on you?
Yes, please lay it on me.
He's an alien in the comic books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's actually dead in the comic books. Well, as of right now, there's like 8 issues or 4, trades that aren't out yet that they haven't written. But he was an alien in the comic books. Like, you don't see his face. You just see him like peel back the back of his skin peeled off one day, and like they tell you he's an alien. But that's it. One little square says he's an alien, and that's it in the comic books.
Yeah, it's weird. I wasn't expecting all of this like kind of answers from a comic book angle of things, but it seems like this show is going in a different direction of the origin of these people, because you're describing a very wacky comic, which sounds like it works very well on these pages. Like, if you start a comic book off with like a galactic wrestling match, it seems like the kind of world that you're getting into. But I don't think we're quite at that level in the Netflix show, so I don't know how an audience would react if all of a sudden somebody's like peeling away their skin and they're an alien.
But they could with that setup though. Like, they don't, like, I don't think the cosmic wrestling match will ever come into play. But they could with the alien thing, showing how old he was. Like, he was in, what was it, in Europe? Like, he looked old already with like his wife or whatever before he even came to America. He built a robot butler or robot mom, and then he had a flying spaceship when all the kids were born already. Like, and he sent a space boy to the moon. Like, he obviously has something going on here that we don't know about to have all this technology.
Yeah. It's kind of giving me vibes of the Watchmen movie compared to the graphic novel. or comic book, whatever you want to call it, where on the pages you got that the evil creature monster, the octopus monster at the very end, but in the movie, they go a little bit more of a logical approach of how the film ends. So maybe they're kind of towing that same line of just like, we're gonna keep some of the outlandish stuff off, but maybe redo it a little bit. So
it's cool. The end of this show ends with them jumping through back in time, hopefully to redo all these events, right, with all the siblings. In the comic book, it ends with a meteor actually hurtling towards Earth, and Klaus in that book also has telekinesis and stops the meteor from hitting the Earth, like right before it hits, rather than this time travel and the apocalypse still kind of happens. So they are making some changes, some changes that are like different, but like still kind of like the same. I gotta say, speaking of Klaus, I liked he's shooting drugs to hide his talking to dead people. Then by the end, you learn his true ability is to actually make the ghosts appear and interact with things in real life, which I thought was really cool to bring the sibling Ben, which is hardly ever seen in the comic book except for telling him he died and he had these weird abilities, which is great. At the end, I love having the dead sibling Ben talk to Klaus the whole time he was going through this as well.
Yeah, this show just had so much going on. I want to see what happens when the Umbrella Academy comes across another superpowered person, because there's supposedly 30 plus of them more out there. So I want to see how those interactions happen. I want to know what kind of backstory that they're going to give the dad. It seems like they're kind of diverting from the comic books a little bit there, so I'd like to see what's going on there. We see in the show that he releases some sort of bottle with fireflies in it or something there. I'd love to know what that is. That seems really weird and really strange. And if they're traveling back in time, how are they going to fix things? Are they just going to travel back a week, a day? How far back are they going to go? Because they said that we got to fix Vanya. So are they just buying themselves time and they're just going to try to convince Vanya to be a better person? Or are they literally going to go back in time, find a little kid Vanya and just be nice to her and then travel back in the future and hopefully things fix itself? There's a lot of cool things that they could do there. One thing that I thought was really cool is I was under the impression that Vanya was going to destroy the Earth with maybe one big violin solo. That's kind of what we all thought. Her power was going to do that. But then when they made her death, she shot that beam out into the sky, and I was like, oh, that's cool. They saved the planet the beam's off, and then it shot the moon. And I was like, oh, that's cool. The moon was shot. And then later, I start to think oh, didn't they mention something about the moon disappearing? And then all of a sudden, you're just like, oh, no, the moon that's falling apart hits the Earth. That's actually what destroys the Earth. So I thought that was kind of a cool chain of events that I wasn't expecting. So because the negatives that I have for the show are basically for things that I could just expect to happen. So it was nice when I came across something that surprised me. But man, this show was so much fun.
It really is. And there's a lot of questions. You're given a lot of questions. You're given some of the answers. But it's also brutal in the way. I like the fight scenes in a lot of these. Those are fun. You just love the characters at the end of the day. And if you love the characters, you're gonna have a good time throughout the show. And you don't have to love them all, but at the same time, the ones that are there a lot, you really care for. I mean, even the Diego character came around in the end. The hard ass knife throwing guy.
We can't forget about everybody's favorite character, number 5's Lady Luck, the mannequin,
Dolores.
That was just hilarious. Now when I walk through a department store, I'm just like, oh, there's Dolores. That was just hilarious. That just adds to the other weird factor of just that's probably what would happen if you're just stuck in the apocalypse all by yourself. You probably would find your own Wilson that you'd fall in love with. And if you don't have a volleyball, a mannequin's probably the next best thing because it actually looks like a human.
Man, before we wrap up, I just want to talk about the apocalypse version that he went to was a different future because he found the eyeball in Spaceboy's hand. Then the guy, whatever his name was, got his eye knocked out, and he was supposed to get this eye in it for him to replace the one he had, but he never did. Changing how the future was changing as they kind of went through this was really cool as well. Little things. But also when the meteors hit the Earth, like everything caught on fire and like vaporized. But the future 5 went to was not vaporized. Like the bodies were still there in the rubble.
Yeah, it was more crumbled.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to know about this kind of future organization is they seem to be like, they're like kind of timekeepers. They're trying to keep the timeline normal. They're trying to keep these fluctuations from happening. They're trying to make sure that events are supposed to happen do happen. So I want to know, in their opinion, why did the apocalypse need to happen? Because, at all costs, they were just like, this apocalypse needs to happen. So are they very, very long-term thinkers? Are they just like, eventually the Earth will rebound at some point in time in like a millennia or so? We're basically these ageless creatures, humans, we can go anywhere in time. So, we'll just play the long game and eventually humanity will come back around and we'll worry about that timeline. So I want to know why that needed to happen. And I'm also curious, are there always fluctuations happening? Because they showed number 5 going back in time to like kill Kennedy. So it seemed like Kennedy had to die. So does that mean like these events are like always happening? Because it seems like at some point in time, your work is, technically all done. It seems like, you put in a couple thousand years of work, the timeline is secure and you're good to go. But it seems like maybe fluctuations can pop up at any time, like, oh crap, somebody's trying to save Kennedy again in this separate timeline. Let's send another Kennedy assassin person because he's got to die in all timelines. So maybe it's an ongoing work. Yeah. So that maybe that's something that'll never get answered. Maybe it's too in the weeds, but I think my idea, the reason why the apocalypse has to happen, is it's the only way that this time organization can ensure all of these super powered people all die and perish. I think that their agenda is, in order to keep the timeline safe, these superpowered people, they're too wild cardy. We don't know what they're going to do. They're going to affect the timeline too much, and there's too many of them. We can't go out and send agents to kill all of them because they're all superpowered, too difficult. Let's just let this apocalypse happen. We'll wipe the Earth clean and we'll start fresh again. That's kind of my idea. I don't know if that's what's going to be, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I don't really. There's a lot of questions, and I'm really looking forward to a second season with this, and maybe opening those up a little bit more, and I don't know, giving us more characters. I'm really excited. And I again, I'm like you. I don't know where it goes from here because all the books I've read, both volumes, are now covered in this. Because in Dallas was the JFK thing and the trip to Vietnam and all that stuff. So, I don't know, and I'm very excited, Mike. So I want to see more. Anything else you want to add? I think we're good. We wrap.
Yeah, I think it's an obvious recommendation from us.
Yeah, really. And if you have any questions or you want to talk about it, let us know.
If you have theories, I want to know theories too. I mean, when you throw time travel into a show, everybody's going to have an idea of what they think is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I've just been sitting here thinking about the Reginald Hargreaves. Like, he is shown before in 1920. Like, nuclear missiles are launching before he got on the boat in 1920. Like, what is that about?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like, maybe is that a different planet or something like that? I don't know.
Oh, possibly, or maybe there was aliens in the 20s and these are like spaceships and they're leaving or something. Yeah, I don't know.
And then like the Fireflies, what if those are like, maybe he came to this world, let the Fireflies out, and that's how these children were born.
Yeah, I thought of maybe rewinding and trying to count them. But I was like, I don't know how many there were. I don't want to know. If it was the exact number, I feel like I don't want my answer just told to me. Yeah, I want to know what those things are. Yeah, I never even thought about being totally different planet. He seemed to have lost his love, and then, decided to leave, maybe came to Earth. Yeah, man, this is such a weird show. I love how weird it is. Like, Hazel and Cha-Cha wear just weird animal helmets for, like, no reason. I don't, like, if they're trying to conceal their identity, there's definitely better ways to do that. And I think they're, like, metal. I think they showed them being, like, bulletproof, so that was just weird. And you kind of build this weird universe. You don't have to explain it. It's just kind of unique,
Yeah, and in the comic books, Hazel and Cha-Cha never take those masks off. Like, those are, you never know who's under it. But, like, I can obviously tell Mary J. Blige isn't much of an actress all around, but she was still fun in that role. And the other guy was in, he's in another Netflix show, Mindhunters. Hazel's in Mindhunters. But, like, yeah, like, what time period did they originally come from is my other question with him. Like, they didn't obviously just come from this time period to be recruited. Like, why were they recruited into this agency? And maybe maybe if they're going back in time, maybe they can show us their origins a little bit more too, and how they got into this. I don't know. I'm excited. I want to see a lot more. I got good questions. So.
Yeah, we got so many questions. They did a great job. Good job, Netflix. This gives me hope for them developing their what was their Mark Miller contract that they bought out kind of all of his properties for development. So this gives me hope that they can translate just kind of these things that the mainstream audience has never heard of into something that people will watch more than like The Flash, on CW, which basically you put an antenna into your TV and you can watch for free. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really, really cool. It gives me hope going forward because we've been a little disappointed as of recently with some Netflix originals, even outside of the superhero realm. The Netflix original stamp is not necessarily the seal of approval it used to be. So I'm glad that it worked this time. So very, very happy.
Yeah, I agree, and this gives me hope. We talk about post Marvel Netflix. I think they're going to be fine, and this just kind of feels more like they can totally do well. Hopefully, they don't have a sophomore slump. That's
yes.
what I'm hoping for. Mike, if people want to know about our regularly scheduled news program that happens every week, where can they find that at?
Well, as always, please visit superheroslate.com. That's the best place to find all the avenues that we host our little show. And when we talk about news, we put our show notes up there. So we're about to talk about a lot of trailers in our news episode. So make sure you're subscribed and go to Superhero Slate and you get links to all those trailers. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can get merch at superheroslate.com/store. And you can find us both individually on social media. Chris, where can people find you if they're looking for you?
You can find me on Twitter at Valdan, VALDAN, or on Instagram, Valdan87. Mike, if people want to know what you're up to, where can they find that at?
Well, they can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Mike Royer Design. And I got some fan art of Klaus up there on my Instagram account because I love that dude so much. So you can check that out there. We love hearing from you. We want to know all of your crazy theories. You can drop that in the YouTube comments if you're watching on YouTube. You can send us a line over Twitter. You can even send us an email through our website. We love hearing from you. If you want to be a fan of the show, if you are a super fan, if you want that moniker, under your belt, if you want to get like a gold chain with the words like super fan, like studded with diamonds on it, and you really want to feel like you earned that, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week.
And twice this week, and we'll catch you on our weekly.
Twice next week too, man.
Oh,
we got a big spoiler cast coming up.
Man, March is looking busy. April's looking busier. May we're gonna love all these reviews this year. So subscribe, and we'll catch you there. We'll see you then.
All right, adios.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
You got anything funny?
Just you saying that was, hey, you got anything funny over there, buddy?